Welcome to the Via de Pratolino, an amazing artwork and village and place that you have probably seen images from before but never really heard of. And so I ended up coming across these semicircle artworks, which one of my next videos is going to be on this artist, who is awesome. Giusto, I forget his name, it is Giusto Utens, and he created these amazing paintings that are on semicircles of these different varieties of properties. So this is what I'm going to read because, as you can see, that stone giant you've seen in so many pictures before of the past, and this is where it's from. And this villa it's been demolished, it's been changed so many different times, but what was its original purpose and what was going on in the world at the time of its construction? I'm sure a lot of that will be left out, but it's a stone giant there, and is that symbol towards something? Is that it's kind of like a weeping giant? I wonder if he had a place in history or if it's from anything. And I'm really curious of when the War of the Giants was. I guarantee there was one at one point. There almost had to have been, because a lot of these structures still seem like they could only be created by giants. Not necessarily this one, but this almost seems like a retreat of someone who fought in the giant wars, and then they made this nice area for themselves, and they honored kind of by showing like a crippled old giant or something. So who knows? I am just theorizing again and again. I find all this stuff on the basis of being an artist, a curious artist in search of some form of truth or just a way to strengthen my imagination. So that's where all this is coming from. I didn't dive extremely deep into this, so if any of you have any insight about this place, please let me know. But there is something to be said from all this. You'll see in a little bit as well, there's a massive tree. There's a lot of cool stuff. So let me read this description real quick. Via di Pratolino. The Via di Pratolino was a Renaissance patrician villa in Vaglia, Tuscany, Italy. It was mostly demolished in the 1820s. Its remains are now part of Via Demidoff, 12 kilometers north of Florence, reached from the main road to Bologna. The history. The villa was built by the solitary Francesco I de' Medici, the Grand Duke of Tuscany, in part to please his Venetian mistress, the celebrated Bianca Capello. The designer of Via and Gardens was his court architect, designer, mechanician, engineer Bernardo Buontalenti, who completed it in a single campaign that lasted from 1569 to 1581, a long time. It was finished enough to provide the setting for Francesco's public wedding to Bianca Capello in 1579. In its time, it was a splendid example of the Mannerist garden. Francesco had assembled most of the property, which was not a hereditary Medici possession, by September 1568, and the construction was begun the following spring. The garden was laid out along a perfectly straight downslope axis, passing through the center of the villa, which stood midway. Down the central descent, the visitor still walks under a cooling arch of fountain jets without getting wet. Michel de Montaigne, one of the earliest visitors to leave a description of Pratolino, saw it in 1581 and considered it to have been built, he thought, when visiting Via de Este, precisely in rivalry with this place. So we'll have to check out that place. A long description was published by a Florentine, Francesco de Vieri, in 1586. Giusto Utens, the artist of the semicircle, included a view of the southern half of the villa complex among his series of lunettes containing bird's-eye views of the Medicean villas, painted in 1599. 6 views were etched by Stefano della Bella, who you'll see the amazing artworks coming up from in a second with the tree and more, in the mid-17th century, and the picture is rounded out by further 18th century descriptions. Nevertheless, Pratolino has not survived, as other Medici villas have. Though the villa and its fountains were kept in repair after Francesco's death, it was deserted. In the 18th century, some of its sculptures were removed to adorn the extension of the Boboli Gardens, and the place was left to fall into decay. By 1798, a German visitor was impressed with the romantic ruin of it. Grand Duke Ferdinand III decided to capitalize on the air of overgrown wildness. In 1820, it was decided to demolish the villa, and the garden was then redesigned in the English landscape manner and became one of the most romantic gardens ever seen in Tuscany. In 1872, the complex was sold by the heirs of Leopold II, former Grand Duke of Tuscany, to Prince Paolo Demidoff, who restored the Paggeria or pages' lodgings of the former residence as the Via Demidov di Pratolino. The property was eventually inherited by Prince Paul of Yugoslavia. Later, the park was bought by the province of Florence, who maintained the park and opened it for public use from May until September. The complicated iconography of the garden is embodied in the brooding statue of Appenine, 1579 to 1580, a colossal structure by Giambologna, which originally seemed to emerge from the vaulted rockwork niche that once surrounded him. Multiple grottos with water-driven automata, a water organ, surprise jets that drenched visitors, finery with the fontaniera, opened secret spigots, offered striking juxtapositions of art with imitations of rugged nature. So wow, that's some crazy fountain tech for the early 1500s. And all with pressure, all with natural techniques. There wasn't just like an electric pump or a fossil fuel-driven pump. But look at this tree. I love this. This reminds me of like Avatar. And if you zoom in, you can see people in the mid-levels. How big were these trees? How much of an ancient forest was around at this time? Because we only know of the surface and the dirt dump and the seeds and the seedlings that have grown since. But this is a glimpse of the olden days when they could live in trees, and trees were strong enough to really put some serious stuff in there. You could have it look like they had a dining party in there. And these statues are awesome. This whole place is filled with arches, incredible stones, and the Medici is definitely something to look into. You know, was this a former garden of, maybe they were celebrating something at that point, the Medicis, because they made all of these amazing things that I'll show you in the next video by Giotto, who just incredible drawings of these villas that were just popping up all over the place after something. It's almost as if they had tons of reward, they had reaped tons of bounty, they had the ability to do almost anything, and hence they built incredible palaces and gardens with amazing tech that is still almost unrivaled today, pretty much. As far as the sculptures and architecture and the fountains and different things, I mean, they have them all over the place now, but do they use kinetic methods or the similar method that they use? Or do they use, ways that aren't really in harmony with the cleanest form of energy? Like it seems like it was in the past. But look at this, like what was this all built for? What kind of parties were here? What kind of celebrations? What kind of thing? How long did it take the artist to do that? What was his true inspiration? How many people came to visit it? What was it telling? The Medicis, who are they really? I'm sure there's tons of videos on it because it's a very popular kind of name and topic that appears a lot. So hopefully people have dived down a lot further than me, and I'm sure they have. So if you have any insight, again, add it below. But look at the obelisks to either side of this place. Again, with the balls of ethereal mercury or whatever the heck is on top, or just solid gold, some metal that was in harmony with everything. But look at this. And how deep does it go? Does it go deeper than this? When they excavated the ruins, how far does it go? Is there an underground sector to this whole thing? How deep does that go? How many tunnels? What was it used for? How old? What's the purpose? All of this stuff we can never really know until we dig, but we get glimpses of this old world paradise, and it is so magical. I mean, you have to go to a festival in order to experience stuff like this, that is this like wild and creative and artistic and nature influenced, and it's just a lot different. And these artworks were by Stefano della Bella, who's another amazing artist, and these engravings are incredible. Can't find too much more from that artist, but he also is the one who did this picture, which appeared in my community, the Death on the Battlefield, which is pretty nuts. You can tell this guy was an artist that had a lot of creative works in his repertoire, and you can barely find any now, which is a bummer, but incredible visions and just amazing. He probably hung out at those tree parties, saw that place a little bit after its prime. To be built in the 1500s is quite impressive, and then especially when you see the collection of other villas that were around the same area and the gardens that seem to all be built around the same area with plenty of space, plenty of amazing money to put into it, so much of an investment, and the places look spectacular. So stay tuned for that next video where I will show more places and tell more about them and maybe find some kind of link in the history to all of this. But again, whatever we're told is, what we're only supposed to know, and there's always so much more pieces to the puzzle. So let's keep piecing it together in whatever way we can. Bless you all. Thanks again.